Well, good morning. Welcome to reInvent. We're excited to be with you and hope you have a wonderful week here. If this is your first time at reInvent, it's a marathon, so pace yourself. You'll be exhausted by Thursday, but hopefully it's a great week for all of you. My name is Jeff Bartley. I'm a product manager on the DataSync team, and I'm going to be joined by Smitha, who owns product management for a couple of our services, including Transfer Family. She'll talk about that as well. So again, excited to have you with us. So in this session, we really want to show you how the services that AWS provides can help you modernize your managed file transfers. And when we talk about managed file transfers, we're talking about the ability to move files at scale, whether it's migrations or whether it's synchronization or whether it's part of your business processes, but really enabling you to move files at scale quickly, securely, and reliably. And we put a lot of work into making it effortless to integrate our services into your business workflows. And we hope you'll leave this session with ideas on how you can better leverage AWS for your file transfer needs. So we'll start this session talking about some of the challenges that our customers, as we go out and talk to them, that they experience today when it comes to managed file transfers, some top use cases they're trying to address, and then our approach to how we make it easy for our customers in each of those use cases up there. And as we go, we'll weave in some real customer examples. We'll talk through some architectures, and I'll show you a demo of using two of our services, DataSync and Transfer Family web apps together, so you can see how those can integrate with each other. And then we'll wrap up, leaving you some resources to try it out in your own AWS environment. So managed file transfers are critical to a wide variety of use cases across businesses and organizations and industries such as financial services, healthcare, life sciences, manufacturing, and many more. When we talk about unstructured data, we're meaning things such as files like spreadsheets or machine-generated data, AI models, reports, images, videos, all of that. It's everywhere. If you manage storage of any kind, you're probably well aware of the proliferation of this data. There's a ton of it out there. So enabling customers to move this data quickly and reliably is key to manage file transfers. And so with data increasing in size and volume and a lot of organizations being spread more globally, exchanging this data quickly and reliably has become more important than ever. And so as we go out and we talk to our customers about what they're trying to do, especially when it comes to file transfers, we consistently hear about some of the challenges that they face with their legacy file transfer solutions. And maybe you face similar challenges around managing things like hardware and software renewals or responding to security issues that can take so much time and effort to deal with. And we're also hearing more and more from customers about how difficult it is to find talent that's familiar with these legacy solutions. They need to manage them effectively, but it's becoming difficult to find people with the right kind of experience to manage this. So a variety of challenges that our customers are facing when it comes to managing these legacy MFT solutions. So over the last 7 years, we've been helping customers address some of these challenges that I just talked about, helping them migrate their legacy MFT solutions to AWS and taking away a lot of that undifferentiated heavy burden, that heavy lifting, so they can focus on the core competencies of their business. DataSync and Transfer Family were both launched at reInvent 2018, so just about 7 years ago, with the goal of making data movement effortless for our customers, regardless of where their data is located. And over the years, as we've talked to customers like you, we've expanded our capabilities to support more data types, more protocols, and more ways of moving data quickly and securely. And a significant expansion of our capabilities came with the launch of B2B data interchange, which we'll often call B2BI, enabling customers to automate the exchange and processing of EDI documents with their trading partners. And EDI is core to many workflows that depend upon managed file transfers, and B2BI addresses key challenges in this area around automation and document translation. And Smith is going to talk about that a little bit later in this session. Now, our approach to tackling the challenges of MFT really focuses on some of these key principles here. So our services encrypt data in flight and at rest, and we validate that all data is moved over the wire byte for byte using checksums all along the way. Automation is key to MFT workflows. If you've built some of your own, you know this. And our solutions integrate seamlessly with other AWS services like step functions, Lambda, and EventBridge, so you can build those automated workflows. We also know that generating reports of file transfers is critical to meeting things like regulatory and compliance needs. And our services provide extensive logging to help you meet those needs. Now, this focus that we have on addressing customer challenges is why tens of thousands of customers around the world have really benefited from our services in the MFT space. And you can see just some of the customers across a wide variety of industries. Now, MFT workflows can cover a broad array of business-specific challenges, as I've already mentioned. So often, this requires a high degree of customization to meet the needs of your specific business needs. So this is where partners can really help. And we've had a variety of customers who have told us that working with partners has really helped them streamline and accelerate the migration process of bringing their legacy MFT solutions into AWS, leveraging services like Transfer Family and DataSync. And partners can really help them, tailor these solutions, providing things like customization, automation, integrating automation with some of those other services that I mentioned to really, again, meet the needs of their specific business. So as an example, these are a number of partners who are validated to follow best practices with AWS Transfer Family. So as an example, Scale Capacity, down there in the right-hand corner, they helped the city of Los Angeles, and who was working on a file transfer system where they needed to enable their employees to be able to download financial records or maybe partners to access these records. And they were initially looking at a solution to run on premises. And they found that it was going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars annually in costs. And by working with Scale Capacity, they were able to implement a cloud-native solution leveraging AWS Transfer Family, and it saved them a significant amount of money, many thousands of dollars annually. And as a citizen of Los Angeles, it's always nice to see my city using my tax dollars efficiently. So this was a great success story for the city of LA. Leveraging a partner specifically to get this work done. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to cover a few use cases. The first of them is migrations, so we'll dive into that. And I'll start by talking about AWS DataSync, which was really built to help our customers streamline their migrations into AWS. So DataSync was built to move data quickly. It uses a custom in-house built protocol that moves data over a network in a parallel fashion, enabling it to move data very, very quickly at high scales and high speed. It's built to be secure and reliable. All data is encrypted in flight using TLS. And we check every byte that gets transferred with checksums all along the way, from reading from the source to writing to the destination. We're validating checksums all along the way to ensure the data is transferred securely and reliably. DataSync can scale to massive sizes. We've got customers using DataSync to move petabytes of data, billions of files, very large data sets. DataSync can scale to that. And then it's designed to be easy to use. So it's got built-in filtering, scheduling, and also audit logging, which is, again, as I mentioned, critical for a number of MFT use cases. So DataSync really focuses on moving data in three areas. And the first of these is enabling on-premises transfers. So DataSync supports systems that can talk a variety of protocols. This could be like a NAS file server that can communicate over NFS or SMB protocols. It supports on-premises object storage systems that use the S3 protocol. And then it also supports Hadoop clusters. So if you're migrating data from Hadoop into the cloud, you can use DataSync for that. And then at the other end, DataSync works natively with a variety of our services, our storage services in AWS, including Amazon S3, FSX. We support all file system types in FSX, as well as Amazon EFS. So you can use DataSync to copy data both to and from these various locations. DataSync also supports moving data between other clouds in AWS. We support a number of clouds, including Google Cloud, Azure Blob, Oracle, basically, if a cloud has an S3, has a cloud storage that supports the S3 protocol, we can typically talk to it. So, and again, you can use DataSync to move between other clouds and AWS. And then finally, we've got a lot of customers who are using DataSync to move data between storage services within AWS entirely. This may be for backup purposes. This may be to move data around between regions. Using DataSync, you can move between any combination here. You could go S3 to FSX, EFS to S3, any combination of those. We support in-region, cross-region, and also cross-account. And all data, as is transferred with DataSync, again, is still encrypted, but it's all writing over the AWS network. The data never leaves the AWS network at all in this particular situation. And so to help our customers really streamline their migrations, we launched Enhanced Mode, which helps customers move data sets with virtually unlimited number of files at speeds up to 8x faster than Basic Mode. Enhanced Mode provides things like detailed metrics that help you track files throughout the data transfer process. It also streamlines cross-cloud transfers. It allows you to move data between clouds without deploying any infrastructure. So we've had a number of customers take advantage of that, and they really like the ability to move data between clouds, completely API-driven. There's no infrastructure to deploy, so making it super easy for customers. So let's dive a little bit deeper into how DataSync helps with accelerating migrations. So if you've performed data migration in the past, you're probably familiar with this kind of pattern. So most migrations go this way, where they'll start with an initial transfer of data. It's a lot of data that needs to be copied to the destination. And then you run a series of incremental transfers over time on typically like a fixed period, maybe daily, every couple of days, until you're ready to do your cutover, which is the point at which your application goes from moving your initial data set to moving the data set that you've migrated to. And DataSync is really built to help with each of these stages. So it has a number of key capabilities that help make migrations simple and efficient. It transfers both data and metadata, which is critical when you want to maintain things like file system permissions. It also provides filtering that helps you ensure that only the data that you need to move is actually migrated. I can scale up to maximize your network bandwidth, and it's got those metrics I mentioned earlier with Enhanced Mode that can really help you understand the scope of your data and what was moved. And here's just a quick video of DataSync running in an initial transfer, so you can see where it's using Enhanced Mode right now, and these metrics can help you really understand exactly what's being moved. So this is a data set of about 200,000 files. You can see as DataSync goes, it's listing, it's preparing, it's transferring and verifying. This is one of the advantages of Enhanced Mode, is that it's doing all of those in parallel. And you can see as it's going, it's transferring and verifying. You can see it's hitting a throughput speed of close to about 600 megabytes per second. But this is really nice for that initial transfer. It helps you see, yes, all the data that was actually found at the source was actually transferred all the way through and ultimately verified and getting good throughput. And so, in under 30 minutes, transferred close to a terabyte of data. So that was the initial transfer. And then as you go into incremental transfers, DataSync also has additional capabilities there as well. So after that initial transfer, you can configure DataSync to run on a schedule so that it can perform those incremental transfers until it's time to cut over. And running the incremental schedules, running the transfers on a schedule is really important because it can help you estimate how long your cutover will take, which is a frequent ask of customers when they're working with us, which is like, hey, when that I have to cut over, because cutover involves downtime, like how long is that cutover going to take? So when you run that incremental transfer with DataSync, that can help you estimate roughly how long you need for a cutover period. And so here's an example of an incremental transfer using that same data set. In this case, what you'll see is that DataSync is still listing all the files, is still finding them, but during the prepare phase, what it's doing is it's comparing those files against the destination. And in this case, there was only 581 files that actually changed, which is pretty typical. And when you're doing an incremental transfer, you'll find that most of the data is static. It's not changing as you go. So those are all marked as skipped, meaning they didn't need to be transferred or verified. In this case, you can see it took a lot less time, under 3 minutes. And so, if this was typical of the change rate of my files, I would probably estimate like a 5-minute cutover. If you had more data or your change rate was higher, obviously it could take a little bit longer, but this is a good way to estimate how long you need for that cutover period when you're performing migrations with DataSync. And then this is a pattern that a number of our customers use when they really want to maximize their network bandwidth. They may have tens of gigabytes or tens of gigabits per second of network bandwidth, and maybe a single DataSync task isn't enough to move data to totally fill that pipeline. And so they can leverage this pattern, which is basically partitioning your data set into multiple subsets of data and then running individual tasks to move that data in parallel. And so we've had customers use this to move petabytes of data a day. And if you want to learn more about that pattern, definitely check out that QR code there. That was a storage blog that was written by one of our solutions architects who's sitting in this crowd right now. Just letting you know. Okay, in fact, we had a customer, London Stock Exchange Group, who needed to do a large migration, about 30 petabytes of historical market data from another cloud into AWS, and they leveraged a partner, DataArt, to help them scale out this migration. They moved 30 petabytes in about 3 months, and I remember when they were doing this, they were moving close to a petabyte of data a day. That's a lot of data to move. But DataSync can scale, and they achieved their timelines they were well underneath their timeline. So a great story for them. Another win too was that moving off of the other cloud and into into Amazon S3, specifically S3 Glacier, they were able to see a significant reduction in their storage costs. They saw about 80% reduction in this case. So a big win. They were able to make their migration timelines as well as save a significant amount of money on their storage costs. Okay, so we talked about migrations. Let's go ahead now and move into a second use case around recurring transfers. And so whereas migrations are usually project-based or it's a one-time data movement type project, there are other use cases where data is being moved on a regular basis. And we're going to cover some of these with customer examples throughout this section. So a lot of our customers continue to have data in on-premises storage, either because they haven't migrated the application yet, or maybe they can't move the application. It will need to continue to run on-premises for an indefinite period of time. But they still want to make a second copy of that data just to protect it. And so they'll often leverage DataSync using this pattern where they'll set up a DataSync agent in their on-premises environment and configure DataSync to run on a schedule, and then just run it on a regular basis, enabling them to meet their data protection goals. And using this, DataSync will automatically run on the schedule, safely and securely moving that data anywhere it's needed. And a lot of our customers will often use this to make a second copy of data in S3, taking advantage of its low-cost storage. So it's a great pattern. In fact, we had a customer, Santos, who needed to do something similar to this, and they produce their workflow produces terabytes of backup files on a daily basis, and they needed to make a second copy of that data in S3 in order to meet some of their internal compliance needs. And the customer started off, as I've seen a lot of customers do, trying to write their own solution, and they quickly ran into a number of headaches that DataSync was designed to address, things around the overhead of managing and deploying scripts and dealing with errors and validating data along the way. And so after learning about DataSync, they were able to get it up and running quickly and vastly simplifying their processes, and it really enabled them to focus on more of their critical business challenges and just get away from do-it-yourself solutions. So a great story for them. Now, I think at this point we're all well aware of the explosion of the use of Gen AI, and we're seeing more customers where DataSync is becoming increasingly important to their data pipeline, particularly when it comes to building out data lakes or on AWS for like AI training and inference purposes. So these data sets can often consist of billions of files and petabytes of data, and DataSync can help customers get that data into AWS storage services like FSx for Lustre or Amazon S3, which were built to scale out and really achieve the levels of data movement that's necessary for a lot of these Gen AI workflows. Now, another area where we see DataSync helping customers with recurring transfers is with machine-generated data. And if you think about all of the machines out there that are running in on-premises environments, they're generating tons and tons of data. These are things like genome sequencers, manufacturing systems, lab instruments in hospitals. Our customers want to get all of that data into the cloud so that they can process and analyze it. They don't want to build out compute systems on premises. So DataSync helps customers streamline these data pipelines and reduce the time it takes to get the results from their data. And this is an example of a common solution that we see with customers using machine-generated data. So this data is typically generated and then it's stored temporarily in some kind of on-premises storage system. It might be a file server like you see in the picture here. And they'll set up DataSync to copy the data, triggering a job when the lab instrument job starts, and they'll transfer the data into something like S3. And then when the job is complete, it'll trigger an event bridge notification. And then using that, what they'll do is they'll then go and clean up the on-premises environment, remove the data. It's no longer needed. It's all up in the cloud. And then it makes room for new jobs that need to be run on premises. And this way they can keep their on-premises storage uncluttered and make it available for all of their processing needs. So Merck is an example of a customer in the life sciences space, and they had the challenge of trying to reduce, they were seeing high levels of rejects in their manufacturing processes. And in working with AWS, they realized that some of the AI services and machine learning services that we provide could help them address this challenge of this high level of rejects. And so they utilized DataSync to bring in a lot of the reject data, the defect images that they were gathering across various sites. They brought that into S3 so it could be utilized by Amazon SageMaker. And then leveraging these services, Merck was able to root cause their issues, optimize their processes, and they ultimately reduced their rejects across their product lines by 50%. So a great story showing how DataSync was part of the overall workflow of bringing the data in so they could be better analyzed in AWS. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go into a demo of DataSync and Transfer Family web apps working together. So kind of building upon that pattern in life sciences that I talked about in healthcare where machines or lab instruments are generating data on premises and customers need to process that data in the cloud. Many times these processes produce reports that need to be reviewed by users in on-premises environments. These could be scientists across the organization maybe it's for quality control or other purposes. And using Transfer Family web apps, which we launched at reInvent last year, end users can now securely and easily access their data stored in S3. And this would be something like generated reports. There's no need, with Transfer Family web apps, there's no need to give your users access to the S3 console. There's no need for complicated third-party applications. So using these two services, DataSync and web apps together, customers are able to streamline their machine-generated workflows and pipelines and make that data really available to their global workforce. So let me dive just a little bit deeper into web apps and what it is. So web apps, again, as I mentioned, it's a capability of Transfer Family that you enable that gives you access to data stored in S3, but it uses a web application that runs entirely out of the AWS console. So it uses AWS Identity Center for authentication and S3 access grants to authorize access to data in your S3 bucket. So it enables you to leverage your existing mechanisms. You can also customize web apps with your own branding. And it's got a simple interface that makes it easy for you to get your end users up and running. So what I'm going to do is go into a demo now. What I'll show specifically is DataSync, using DataSync to copy data from an NFS server in the demo. And and then it'll be copied into an S3 bucket. And then with the data in S3, I'll then show how easy it is to leverage web apps in order to access that data in S3 and make it available to your end users. All right, so let's kick off the demo. So here I'm logged into my NFS server, and you can see that my current directory is mount NFS demo. So that's the folder that contains the data that I want to copy. And I've got an NFS export on my server, mount NFS. That'll be important when we come to configuring DataSync. I've got 5 folders in there. I want to copy the 2 archive folders up into my S3 bucket. But I'm going to keep the prod ones on there for now. You can see what's in my archive folders. I've got a handful of files. I've got a text file that gives a listing of MD5 sums in the archive1 folder. And then I've got this ignore.temp file, which I don't want to copy, and so I'll use that to show how you can use exclude filters with DataSync to avoid copying data that you don't want to copy. So from here, we'll hop over to the AWS console. And this is the S3 bucket that I'm going to use to store my data. So this is where I'm going to copy data from my NFS server into this bucket. You can see it's currently empty. Right now, there's no data in it, but it's called JB Web Apps. So that's where we'll store our data here in a little bit. I'm going to jump over to the DataSync console, and I'm going to create a task. And a task is what tells DataSync how to move data from one place to another. So I start off by configuring a source location. And my source is my NFS server. I deployed an agent earlier, and an agent is a virtual machine that I use to connect to my on-premises NFS server. So I select that agent, and then I specify the IP address or domain name of my NFS server, and then the mount path, which is how DataSync is going to access the server. So if you remember earlier, I showed you that mount point, which was mount NFS, so I use that. And then I'm going to specify my destination location, which is an S3 bucket. That's that JB Web Apps bucket that I showed you earlier. So that's going to be my destination location. And then the next phase is to configure my DataSync task. I'll give it a simple name just so I can recognize it when I'm working in the DataSync console. And then I'm going to specify which data I want to copy. And so in this case, I'm going to use filtering to add an include filter. If you remember, I only want to copy my archive folders. So I'll specify an include filter that looks like that. And then if you remember, I also wanted to exclude the temporary file. So I'm going to exclude anything that ends in .temp. So just copy those files and exclude the temp file. Everything else, I'll keep it as the same. I'll review it. Everything looks good. And I'll go ahead and create my task. So at this point, I've created my DataSync task, and I'm going to go ahead and start it. And that will kick off the process of actually running the task to copy the data from my NFS server into my S3 bucket. And so while that's running, we're going to go ahead and hop over to the AWS Transfer Family console and take a look at a web app that I configured already. So I already configured this web app server. I configured it with my identity provider. You can see up there, that's the IAM Identity Center provider that I created earlier. And I have a user, Jeff, down there, and I've given Jeff access via S3 access grants to my bucket, my S3 bucket. And then I've got my web apps endpoint, which is the actual endpoint that I will access in my browser to access the actual web apps interface itself. And that gets automatically generated for you. And so this is what it looks like, a very simple interface. You can see my bucket is in there. I click on my bucket. It's empty right now. There's no data in there. And so once the data is copied, we'll come back and we'll take a look at that. So we'll jump back over to the DataSync console. You can see we've copied our data. It's about 14 files, small amount of data. Again, not a lot, but it was copied in a quick amount of time. But we can see that the data was copied successfully. And then if we jump over to our S3 bucket and we do a refresh, we can see that the data was copied in there successfully. I've got my 2 archive folders. The prod folders were not copied. There's the MD5 text file that I'll look at later. And then you can see that the temp file was not copied because it was excluded using that exclude filter that we specified in DataSync. So we successfully copied the data over. I go and refresh my web apps environment, and you can see it just mirrors the data that's in S3. Again, this is because of how I configured the S3 access grants to provide access to my web apps, to my web app. You can see I can download the file, and if I open up that MD5 text, it matches what I had on my NFS server, so I can use that if I want to look at any of the MD5 sums for any of the files there. But you can see, very simple, utilize DataSync to copy the data from on-premises up into AWS, and then from there, leveraging web apps to access that data in S3. And again, the great thing about web apps, you notice you don't have to go through the S3 console. You can easily enable your end users to access data stored in S3, leveraging single sign-on capabilities or whatever authentication mechanisms that you have available today. So again, a great example of showing DataSync and transfer family web apps working together. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Smitha, who's going to talk more about transfer family and some other use cases.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so let's switch gears a little bit here, right? Jeff talked about DataSync and a little bit about transfer family. Now, what if you don't have control over both ends of the file transfer? So let's say there's an application that's generating data that you need, or you need to deliver data to an application that's outside of your purview in a business partner's environment. And that's where AWS Transfer Family comes in with its fully managed file transfers over industry standard protocols like SFTP and AS2. There are a lot of use cases that customers use AWS Transfer Family for today. Notably, one is exchanging documents that are subject to regulatory needs like PII, PHI, HIPAA. If you're operating in, let's say, financial services or healthcare, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, a number of industries need to exchange data securely, and that's where Transfer Family's MFT capabilities are used. Second is ERP integration. Let's say you have an SAP implementation and so does your business partner, and you want both of these to talk to each other because maybe you operate a supplier and you need to get purchase orders from your manufacturer or your end customer. So that's where MFT, Transfer Family's MFT, is used to connect these two applications that are cross business boundaries. If you are a content distributor, let's say you produce value-added data sets, right? Whether that data is for analytics or their media or software, you want an MFT that can scale and expand your subscriber growth as well as protect your revenue source. So Transfer Family's fine-grained access controls helps you give access to just the data that your users are subscribed to. And fourth, if you are operating a manufacturing facility and you want to capture that data into S3 so that you can detect errors soon or run proactive maintenance, Transfer Family's SFTP is commonly used as a data ingestion pipeline. So there are way more use cases where Transfer Family is used, and these are just a few examples. So looking at this architecture a little bit, Transfer Family helps you capture data from a number of different source types, whether it's manually written scripts like SFTP, FTP scripts, or you have non-technical users, kind of like what Jeff showed in the demo with Transfer Family web apps, who want to get data in through a commonly used client called the web browser, right? Third is a remote SFTP source. So you might be processing healthcare claims, or you're writing a payments reconciliation workflow, and you need to talk to a clearinghouse's SFTP server. And finally, and also, let's say you are using this protocol called Applicability Statement 2, and you need to interact with a partner's AS2 implementation. So that's where Transfer Family gives you a number of resources, from servers to web UI to connectors, to be able to get the data in to your Amazon S3 bucket or EFS file system. So then after that, as the slide says, the possibilities within AWS are endless. One specific service that I'll talk about a little later is AWS B2B Data Interchange for managed EDI integrations. So talking a little bit, we've invested a lot of time into making MFT event-driven so that you can automate your file processing end-to-end. So let's take a quick look at this architecture. Let's say your business partner sends you a file over one of these industry standard protocols and you're using AWS Transfer Family. As soon as the file lands in your S3 bucket, AWS Transfer Family emits a very specific file transfer event that has all the context about the file transfer, whether the transfer failed or was successful or was it a partial upload, what was the user source IP, where did that file come from, the username, and then the file name. So you get a lot of information that the transfer family knows about whether the file transfer was success or a fail. And along with that, you can easily kick off a step function workflow. And as part of that step function, you can tag the file, archive it for, for auditors later on. A lot of our customers want to do file format checks. So let's say you expected a CSV from your trading partner, but they sent you a JSON, and you want to reject that file right away. So you can make it right as part of that workflow. A pretty good privacy encryption. PGP is commonly used, so your trading partner encrypts the file because it was a PII data. Now, as soon as the file lands, you want to be able to automatically decrypt the file. And soon after that, if the file traversed over the internet, many of our customers want to scan for malware. So if you detect any malware, you want to be able to toss the file right out, right there, and then only let clean files be used by your internal business systems. So you can run all of this within step function. And the beauty of this is you combine Amazon Event Bridge so that you can run you can tailor your processing on a per user or a per source file basis. Now, there are two components here that help you do that customization. One is our integration with EventBridge, and second is the use of DynamoDB to store a lot of this information where the service can read from. So if you look at this, the service emits these detailed events, right? As you can see, this is just a snippet of events that is emitted, where you can parse these events and run rules-based processing on, hey, if the file came from this source IP, this is what I want to do, or this file was a partial upload. I don't want to take it in my data pipelines because it's going to mess up my calculation. So you can run a lot of these rules right here as part of your step function workflow. And because the service recognizes your DynamoDB tables, you can use it to store the username, their credentials, what data they have access to, and what source IP you expect them to come from when they access your data, and most importantly, what rules you want to run, right? If this trading partner is from company X and they sent a JSON, how do you want to process it? So super customizable at the end of the day on what kind of processing you want to run in AWS. So there's a QR code there with a self-paced workshop where you can build the exact same architecture that I showed you on the previous slide and automate your MFT for greater scale and flexibility. So I want to talk about FICO because they built this exact architecture. So FICO, helps businesses, globally in around 80 countries to do anything, pretty much from protecting credit cards from fraud to, improving financial inclusion or even increasing supply chain resiliency. Now, as a global leader in credit card analytics, FICO processes massive volumes of sensitive data using an MFT. So that means secure and efficient file transfers are super critical to their operations. Earlier, they were using a legacy MFT implementation, and with that, they had to manage a whole lot of infrastructure, like SFTP servers, storage, whether it was in use or not. That resulted in a lot of management overhead and costs. Now, once FICO have switched to AWS Transfer Family, that's eliminated a lot of infrastructure that they needed to manage before. They're able to deploy their infrastructure, MFT, globally using infrastructure as code within minutes, which was not possible before. And they've also lowered their TCO, and not just lowered TCO. Now they can calculate costs of running an MFT more granularly and more accurately across different business units at FICO. There's a QR code there that details FICO's MFT transformation journey that I'd love for you to check out. So let's talk about another important use case. For many of you who need to submit regulatory filings as part of either you're in pharmaceuticals or you're in the food industry, what you want to be able to, what our customers have been able to do using Transfer Family is super streamline that submission. So let's say a file is generated by an application that you're running in AWS. So let's say it's a PDF of medical records, and you drop that file into S3. Once you drop, Transfer Family can listen to that events and send those files over to a documents portal or a document server hosted by the regulatory body like the FDA or the SEC. And once they receive the file, if you're using AS2, you can receive a confirmation of receipt from the regulatory body so that you can audit, so you can archive that receipt for future purposes. So you can automate this whole thing using Transfer Family and Amazon S3. That way, the whole submissions process, scales up, as your business grows, and also is reliable. So you can make sure that you're submitting these submissions on time. So let me talk a little bit about Trustwell's Food Logic platform. Now, they help their customers manage supply chain and traceability challenges, which is super important for customers who operate in the food and drug industry. Trustwell's Food Logic platform uses AS2 SFTP because that's the way they get messages from their supply chain partners. Earlier, they were also using a legacy MFT implementation. And what would happen is when the license expired, the whole their MFT would go down. Or if there was a certificate expiration, they wouldn't even know when that happened. And that bringing down their MFT meant their business was disrupted for days. So what Food Logic did was they consolidated all of that file transfers using AWS Transfer Family. So now they run their AS2 and SFTP using our service. As a result, they have improved availability and uptime. They're able to onboard new relationships, in a much shorter time than before. And because it's a managed service, they're, automatically up to date with the latest security and compliance standards. So now let's talk about when processing is part of the file transfer. And electronic data interchange is a major driver of that type of processing used in different industries. So if you're in healthcare and you're doing claims processing, or you're in transportation and logistics and you want to track shipments, or you're in manufacturing and you have an SAP implementation and you want to send a purchase order, let's say, to your supplier's ERP. So this is where EDI is prevalent because it's an industry standard. Some of the standards are X12, EDIFACT, and in healthcare, HL7v2 is very common. Now, while EDI is used as part of moving data, the problem is it's not compatible internally with your business applications or your data lakes as you want to build these data pipelines out for, let's say, even AI ML, just like Jeff showed you earlier. And that's exactly the reason we launched AWS B2B Data Interchange at reInvent 23 to automate the validation and processing of X12 documents to and from JSON and XML. JSON and XML are common representation formats that you can use with your business systems and data lakes. The service gives you extensive logging and monitoring. Errors are common in this technology, so you want to be able to troubleshoot faster before they become a business problem for you. Being an AWS managed service, the service automatically scales to your needs and it's uptime and highly available and with a high degree of uptime. My favorite feature about this service is it empowers you to use generative AI to generate mapping code between X12 and your custom format for XML and JSON. So you can use, so that really reduces the time and effort needed to generate that mapping code. It's a one-time setup so that automatically documents are translated between these different formats. So let's take a look at an architecture diagram again. Right? So let's say you interact with a trading partner and they send you a purchase order, like X12850. Many of you might have heard of that. If you receive that document over AWS Transfer Family, let's say SFTP, FTPS, or AS2, an event is emitted, as I mentioned earlier. Now, B2B data interchange listens on that event and your bucket to automatically pick up that file, transform it, tell you whether it's good or bad, give you acknowledgement files, and then place the processed file into another S3 bucket, or same, but it's your S3 bucket, so that you can use that data to either build your data lake or feed it to an application like SAP or your transportation management system or your claims processing engine. And there are two things that I really want to call out about this architecture. Right? One, you're combining the time-tested industry formats like SFTP, AS2, X12 with modern paradigms like event-driven and generative AI so that you can achieve scale, flexibility, and lower your total cost of ownership of managing an end-to-end MFT. The second thing I want to talk about, which may not be very obvious, is you've leveraged now your trading partner relationship into a data pipeline. So your trading partners, your trading relationship is now doing double duty in giving you a data line, into giving you a data pipeline so that you can get real-time insights into your transactional data. So there is a video we just published last week, fresh off the press, where's a demo of this architecture where the business application is an SAP. So I'd love for you to watch the video. It's just about 8 minutes long, and it talks about how you can build this end-to-end architecture using SAP as the ERP. Obviously, it'll work with many other business applications, but the demo talks more about focusing on SAP. So BizCloud Experts is an IT consulting company who automates, accelerates, and empowers different customers of ours to scale and innovate with confidence. So a customer in the food and beverage industry approached BizCloud Experts because they were using a legacy EDI solution that was very difficult to manage and also extremely expensive. BizCloud Experts stepped in, developed their expertise around our services, and helped this customer move their 100+ trading partner relationships and 250,000 message volume per month from their legacy implementation to AWS B2B data interchange in a very short period of time. They also avoided renewing their license, and now they save over $1 million annually in licensing costs as a result of this migration. Also, cherry on the top is they're able to onboard trading partner relationships much faster, as you can see from the slide, in days, because now the customer controls the entire process by themselves. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to BizCloud Experts who really helped this customer in time of need. Okay, cool. I know we talked about a lot of concepts today. Just to quickly wrap it up, here's my request. This is the time. Pull out your mobile phone, scan that QR code right there, and send an email to your AWS account manager saying, hey, I attended STG361 with Jeff and Smitha, and I learned about how making file transfers super effortless can help me unlock innovation in my company. I learned about 3 use cases and architectures for each of these use cases, and I want to easily meet my compliance and regulatory needs. So I want to get started today. And I really hope to hear from your account manager so we can help you with that. Few more sessions later today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, where each of these sessions will dive into the services that we talked about. So, I'd love for you to attend and learn more. And finally, thank you for attending. We'd appreciate if you can fill out the session survey and leave us feedback so we can keep refining on our content. Thank you.